The devil is believed in many religions, myths and cultures to be a supernatural entity that is the personification of evil and the enemy of God and humankind. The nature of the role varies greatly, ranging from being an effective opposite force to the Creator God, locked in an eons-long struggle for human souls on what may seem even terms, to being a comical figure of fun or an abstract aspect of the individual human condition. While mainstream Judaism contains no overt concept of a devil, Christianity and Islam have variously regarded the devil as a rebellious fallen angel that tempts humans to sin, if not committing evil deeds himself. In these religions particularly during periods of division or external threat the devil has assumed more of a dualistic status commonly associated with heretics, infidels, and other unbelievers. As such, the devil is seen as an allegory that represents a crisis of faith, individualism, free will, wisdom and enlightenment. In mainstream Islam and Christianity, God and the devil are usually portrayed as fighting over the souls of humans. The devil rules hell, where he and his demons punish the damned. The devil commands a force of evil spirits, commonly known as demons. The Hebrew Bible describes the adversary as an angel who instigates tests upon humankind. Many other religions have a trickster or tempter figure that is similar to the devil. Modern conceptions of the devil include the concept that it symbolizes humans' own lower nature or sinfulness. Etymology: devil descends from the Middle English devil, from Old English diaphor, that in turn represents an early Germanic borrowing of Latin diabolus. This in turn was borrowed from ancient Greek diabolos, slanderer, from diaboline to slander across, through plus baline to hurl. In the New Testament, Satan occurs more than 30 times in passages alongside diabolos, referring to the same person or thing as Satan. Abrahamic religions, Judaism. In mainstream Judaism there is no concept of a devil like in mainstream Christianity or Islam. Texts make no direct link between the serpent that tempts Eve in the Garden of Eden from Genesis and references to a Satan in the first book of Chronicles and in Job. In Hebrew, the biblical word ha-Satan means the adversary, or the obstacle, or even the prosecutor. As much as the devil exists in any form of Judaism, his role is as an adversary and an accuser which is assigned rather than assumed. For the Hasidim of the 18th century, ha-Satan was Baal-Davar. Apocrypha Deuterocanon. In the Book of Wisdom, the devil is represented as the one who brought death into the world. The second book of Enoch contains references to a watcher angel called Satan, describing him as the prince of the Grigori who was cast out of heaven and an evil spirit who knew the difference between what was righteous and sinful. A similar story is found in 1 Enoch. However, in that book, the leader of the Grigori is called Simjar Sent. In the apocryphal literature, Satan rules over a host of angels. Mastema, who induced God to test Abraham through the sacrifice of Isaac, is identical with Satan in both name and nature. The Book of Enoch contains references to Sethariel, thought also to be Sataniel and Satanel. The similar spellings mirror that of his angelic brethren Michael, Raphael, Uriel and Gabriel, previous to his expulsion from heaven. Christianity. In mainstream Christianity the devil is known as Satan and sometimes as Lucifer, although it has been noted that the reference in Isaiah 14:12 to Lucifer, or the son of the morning, is a reference to the Babylonian king. Some modern Christians consider the devil to be an angel who, along with 1/3 of the angelic host, rebelled against God and has consequently been condemned to the lake of fire. He is described as hating all humanity, opposing God, spreading lies and wreaking havoc on the souls of mankind. Other Christians consider the devil in the Bible to refer figuratively to human sin and temptation and to any human system in opposition to God. Satan is often identified as the serpent who convinced Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. Thus, Satan has often been depicted as a serpent. Though this identification is not present in the Adam and Eve narrative, this interpretation goes back at least as far as the time of the writing of the Book of Revelation, which specifically identifies Satan as being the serpent. In the Bible, the devil is identified with a dragon, and the old serpent in the Book of Revelation 12:9, 22 have also been identified with Satan, as have the prince of this world in the Book of John 12:31, 14:30. the prince of the power of the air also called Merririm, and the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience in the book of Ephesians 2:2. And the god of this world in 2 Corinthians 4:4. He is also identified as the dragon in the book of Revelation, and the tempter of the Gospels. Beelzebub is originally the name of a Philistine god but is also used in the New Testament as a synonym for Satan. A corrupted version, Beelzebub, appears in the Divine Comedy. In other, non-mainstream, Christian beliefs, the word Satan in the Bible is not regarded as referring to a supernatural, personal being but to any adversary, and figuratively refers to human sin and temptation. Islam. In Islam, the devil is referred to as Bull or sometimes the Shaitan. According to the Quran, God created Bull, along with all of the other jinn, out of smokeless fire. The primary characteristic of the devil, besides hubris, is that he has no power other than the power to cast evil suggestions into the hearts of men and women. According to Muslim theology, Bull was expelled from the grace of God when he disobeyed God by choosing not to pay homage to Adam, the father of all mankind. He claimed to be superior to Adam, on the grounds that man was created of earth unlike himself. As for the angels, they prostrated before Adam to show their homage and obedience to God. However, Bull, adamant in his view that man is inferior, and unlike angels was given the ability to choose, made a choice of not obeying God. This caused him to be expelled by God, a fact that Bull blamed on humanity. Initially, the devil was successful in deceiving Adam, but once his intentions became clear, Adam and Eve repented to God and were freed from their misdeeds and forgiven. God gave them a strong warning about Bull and the fires of hell and asked them and their children to stay away from the deceptions of their senses caused by devil. According to the verses of the Qur'an, unregistered trademark and the devil's mission until the Qiyamah or resurrection day is to deceive Adam's children. After that, he will be put into the fires of hell along with those whom he has deceived. The devil is also referred to as one of the jinn, as they are all created from the smokeless fire. The Quran does not depict Bull as the enemy of God, as God is supreme over all his creations and Bull is just one of his creations. Bull's single enemy is humanity. He intends to discourage humans from obeying God. Thus, humankind is warned to struggle against the mischiefs of Satan and temptations he puts them in. The ones who succeed in this are rewarded with paradise, attainable only by righteous conduct. Bahá'í Faith. In the Bahá'í Faith, a malevolent, superhuman entity such as a devil or Satan is not believed to exist. These terms do, however, appear in the Bahá'í writings, where they are used as metaphors for the base nature of man. Human beings are seen to have free will, and are thus able to turn towards God and develop spiritual qualities or turn away from God and become immersed in their self-centered desires. Individuals who follow the temptations of the self and do not develop spiritual virtues are often described in the Bahá'í writings with the word satanic. The Bahá'í writings also state that the devil is a metaphor for the insistent self, or lower self, which is a self-serving inclination within each individual. Those who follow their lower nature are also described as followers of the evil one. Yazidism, an alternate name for the main deity in the tentatively Indo-European pantheon of the Yazidi, Mlik Taus, is Shaitan. Rather than satanic, however, Yazidism is better understood as a remnant of a pre-Islamic Middle Eastern religion, and or a Ulat Sufi movement founded by Sheikh Odi ibn Yusufar. The connection with Satan, originally made by Muslim outsiders, attracted the interest of 19th-century European travelers and esoteric writers. Other religions, neo-paganism, Christian tradition has frequently identified pagan religions and witchcraft with the influence of Satan. In the early modern period, the Church accused alleged witches of consorting and conspiring with Satan. Several modern conservative Christian writers, such as Jack Chick and James Dobson, have depicted today's neo-pagan and witchcraft religions as explicitly satanic. Few neo-pagan reconstructionist traditions recognize Satan or the devil outright. However, many neo-pagan groups worship some sort of horn god, for example as a consort to the great goddess in Wicca. These gods usually reflect mythological figures such as Cernunnos or Pan, and any similarity they may have to the Christian devil seems to date back only to the 19th century, when a Christian reaction to Pan's growing importance in literature and art resulted in his image being translated to that of the devil. New Age movement. Participants in the New Age movement have widely varied views about Satan, the devil, and so forth. In some forms of esoteric Christianity, Satan remains as a being of evil, or at least a metaphor for sin and materialism, but the most widespread tendency is to deny his existence altogether. Lucifer, on the other hand, in the original Roman sense of light bringer, occasionally appears in the literature of certain groups as a metaphorical figure quite distinct from Satan, and without any implications of evil. For example, Theosophy founder Madame Blavatsky named her journal Lucifer since she intended it to be a bringer of light. Many New Age schools of thought follow a non-dualistic philosophy that does not recognize a primal force for evil. Even when a dualistic model is followed, this is more often akin to the Chinese system of yin and yang, in which good and evil are explicitly not a complementary duality. Schools of thought that do stress a spiritual war between good and evil or light and darkness include the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner, Agni Yoga, and the Church Universal and Triumphant. Satanism. Some religions worship the devil. This can be in a polytheistic sense where God, Satan, and others are all deities with Satan as the preferred patron. Or it can be from a more monotheistic viewpoint, where God is regarded as a true God, but is nevertheless deified. Some variants deny the existence of God and the devil altogether, but still call themselves Satanists, such as Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, which sees Satan as a representation of the primal and natural state of mankind. Much satanic law does not originate from actual Satanists, but from Christians. Best known would be the medieval folklore and theology surrounding demons and witches. A more recent example is the satanic ritual abuse scare of the 1980s, beginning with the memoir Michel Remembers a which depicts Satanism as a vast conspiracy of elites with a predilection for child abuse and human sacrifice. This genre regularly describes Satan as actually appearing in person in order to receive worship. Zoroastrianism. In the Gathas, the oldest texts of the Zoroastrian Avesta, believed to have been composed by Zoroaster himself, the poet does not mention a manifest adversary. Ahura Mazda's creation is truth, Asher. The lies manifest only as decay or chaos, not an entity. Later, in Zervanism, Ahura Mazda and the principle of evil, Angra Mainyu, are the twin offspring of Zervan, time. No trace of Zervanism exists after the 10th century. Today, the Parsis of India largely accept the 19th century interpretation that Angra Mainyu is the destructive emanation of Ahura Mazda. Instead of struggling against Mazda himself, Angra Mainyu battles Spenta Mainyu, Mazda's creative emanation. Hinduism. In contrast to Christianity and Islam, Hinduism does not recognize any central evil force or entity such as the devil opposing God and man. Hinduism does recognize that different beings and entities can perform evil acts, under the temporary dominance of the guna of tamas, and cause worldly sufferings. The Rajasic and Tamasic gunas of Maya are considered especially close to the Abrahamic concept, the hellish parts of the ultimate delusion called prakriti. An embodiment of this is the concept of Advaita, where there is no good or evil but simply different levels of realization. On the other hand, in Hinduism, which provides plenty of room for counterpoint, there is also the notion of Dvaita, where there is interplay between good and evil tendencies. A prominent Asura is Rahu, whose characteristics are similar to those of the devil. However, Hindus, and Vaishnavits in particular, believe that an avatar of Vishnu incarnates to defeat evil when evil reaches its greatest strength. The concept of guna and karma also explain evil to a degree, rather than the influence of a devil. To be more specific, Hindu philosophy defines that the only existing thing is the Almighty God. So, all the Asuric tendencies are inferior and mostly exist as illusions in the mind. Asuras are also different people in whom bad motivations and intentions have temporarily outweighed the good ones. Different beings like Siddha, Gandharva, Yaksha etc. are considered beings unlike mankind, and in some ways superior to men. In Ayavasi, officially an offshoot of Hinduism prominent in Tamil Nadu, followers, unlike most other branches of Hinduism, believes in a Satan-like figure, Krini. Krini, according to Al-Avazi, is the primordial manifestation of evil and manifests in various forms of evil, that is, Ravana, Duryodhana, etc., in different ages or yugas. In response to such manifestation of evil, believers, in Avazi religion believe that God, as Vishnu, manifests in his avatars such as Rama and Krishna to defeat evil. Eventually, the Ekam with the spirit of Narayana incarnates in the world as Avakanda to destroy the final manifestation of Krini, Kalayan. Krini, the spirit of Kali Yuga, is said to be omnipresent in this age, and that is one reason followers of Avazi, like most Hindus, believe that the current Yuga, Kali Yuga, is so degraded. Buddhism. A devil-like figure in Buddhism is Mara. He is a tempter, who also tempted Gautama Buddha by trying to seduce him with a vision of beautiful women who, in various legends, are often said to be Mara's daughters. Mara personifies unskillfulness, the death of the spiritual life. He tries to distract humans from practicing the spiritual life by making the mundane alluring or the negative seem positive. Another interpretation of Mara is that he is the desires that are present in one's own mind preventing the person from seeing the truth. So in a sense, Mara is not an independent being but a part of one's own being that has to be defeated. In daily life of the Buddha, the role of devil has been given to Devadatta. Ancient Egypt. In the Osirian drama we find that Auser is chopped into 13 pieces by Set. Aurzit collects all of his pieces save his phallus. Horus, son of Auser and Aurzit, sets out to avenge the death and dismemberment of his father by confronting Set. Horus is victorious over Set, and Auser, being brought back from the dead, becomes lord of the underworld. It is this drama that gives us the cosmic conflict between good and evil, evil being embodied by Set. This is not to say that Set was always seen as an evil character in ancient Egyptian theology. There are many times in ancient Egyptian history where conflicts between different houses lead to the depreciation of one god relative to another. As in most polytheistic faiths, the characters involved differentiate themselves from the Western tradition of a devil in that all the gods are closely related. In this case, numerous historic texts suggest that Set is the uncle or brother of Horus, and in the defeat of Set, we see another separation from the norm in the devouring assimilation of Set into Horus, with the result of Horus having depictions of both the falcon head and the head of Set. This represents a dissolution of dichotomy. World folklore. In the Western Christian tradition, the devil has entered popular folklore, particularly in his role as a trickster figure. As such, he is found as a character in a wide number of traditional folktales and legends from Ireland, Newfoundland, Italy and the United Kingdom, where he often attempts to trick or outwit other characters. In some of these tales, the devil is portrayed as more of a folk villain than as the personification of evil. The devil also features prominently in a number of hagiographical tales, or tales of the saints, such as the popular tale of Saint Dunstan, many of which may fall outside the authorized religious canon. The devil is also a recurring feature in tales explaining the etymology of geographical names, lending his name to natural formations such as the Devil's Chimney. David Ferriero, archivist of the United States, claims to have only one piece of correspondence with the devil in the nation's vast and varied collections. A letter sent from Baltimore at the end of the American Civil War to Confederate leader Jefferson Davis bemoans the rebellion against the United States and is signed by the devil. A series of video games was created in honor of the devil, by Blizzard North Company. Diablo is an action role-playing series of games, in which Diablo terrorizes the world and the hero gets rid of him, again and again. Bob Dylan refers to the Satan in his song Man of Peace, from his album Infidels. Dylan claims that the Satan can be wearing even the most pleasant disguise and can be found in everyone, even the least expected. Other names. Demons. In some religions and traditions, these titles are separate demons. Others identify these names as guises of the devil. Even when thought of as individual demons, some are often thought of being under the devil's direct control. This identifies only those thought of as the devil. List of demons has a more general listing. Titles. These are titles that almost always refer to the devil. A list of liturgical names for the devil may be found in Geoffrey Burton Russell, Lucifer, the Devil in the Middle Ages, PA 128, Note 76 online. God is the devil. Several religious authors throughout history have advanced the notion that the God of the Bible is consistent in character with the devil. They make the case that the biblical God is a divine force that wreaks suffering, death and destruction and that tempts or commands humanity into committing mayhem and genocide. Tertullian accuses Marcion of Sinope, the first great heretic of Christianity in the 1st century, that he held that the Old Testament was a scandal to the faithful and accounted for it by postulating that Jehovah was a secondary deity, a demiurgus, who was God, in a sense, but not the supreme God. He was just, rigidly just, he had his good qualities, but he was not the good God, who was Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. The Church condemned his writings as heretical. John Arenzen in the Catholic Encyclopedia mentions that Eusebius accused Apelles, the 2nd century AD Gnostic, of considering the inspirer of Old Testament prophecies to be not a god, but an evil angel. Hegemonius accuses the Persian prophet Mani, founder of the Manichaean sect in the 3rd century AD, identified Jehovah as the devil god which created the world, and said that he who spoke with Moses, the Jews, and the priests is the prince of darkness, not the God of truth. These writings refer to the Abrahamic God variously as a demiurgus, an evil angel, the devil god, the prince of darkness, the source of all evil, the devil, a demon, a cruel, wrathful, warlike tyrant, Satan, and the first beast of the Book of Revelation. See also, Deal with the devil, devil in popular culture, theistic Satanism, hell, Hades, underworld, lawsuits against the devil, non-physical entity, footnotes. References. External links, the dictionary definition of devil at Wiktionary, media related to the devil at Wikimedia Commons, entry from the Catholic Encyclopedia, The History of the Devil, ASIN, B001-OPZE1M, video on YouTube and watchdocumentary.org, The Devil, Unjustly Maligned.